I'm Anne Reed.
And I'm Hastings Reed of Oakley Custom Woodworks in Mobile, Alabama. And welcome to our shop. We started about 5 years ago, not in this location, but in a small building in our back garden. And we originally, I started this as a hobby to build our kitchen and bathroom vanities and other things for our historic house that we were redoing. And when the recession hit, Anne said, well, why don't we do this as a business as opposed to a hobby? And so that's what we did, and we took this space and developed the business from there. If it wasn't for Mississippi, Alabama would be the last on the league of many things, whether it be, so in some ways there's a lot about living in a red state, a virulently red state, I might say. But on the other hand, there's a great deal of charm to it. There's a lot of old tree canopy, which makes for very nice, a lot of older buildings. There's a history, and it's not, and many people from Mobile have lived in Mobile for multiple generations. So there's a sense of rootedness that in the people. When you go and see a client, there's no such thing as a quick 5-minute visit.
It's an hour's trip.
It's an hour's trip. People want to sit down and talk, and you just allow time for that, and it's very nice. And I think the pace is slower in the South, but that's something that we've learned to embrace rather than get frustrated with. Originally, we thought the business would be more focused around cabinetry, but in fact, because of relationships we have in the Historical Society, we were asked to do historic window replacement with the Mobile Bay Lighthouse windows that we did, and we became one of the sort of select vendors on that list. And today, historic replacement windows are very much our bread and butter. And then now we're expanding from historic windows to modern double glazed, thermally efficient windows as well. All right, so the owner wanted shutters that would protect the property in the event of windstorm or hurricane. And as you can see, the brick spaces between the windows are not even. So we had to design the shutters to be asymmetric to show a nice brick reveal here. But when these shut, there wasn't enough space. So what we did was, like a dining room table, put an infill panel like that. So welcome to Dolphin Way United Methodist Church. This sanctuary has 14 windows that are approximately 22 feet high by 4.5 feet wide. And 2 years ago we were asked to replace them as they had rotted. The church was built in the 1950s, and so we were asked to look at the job. And before doing these, the largest window we had built was for a house, so this presented a challenge to us in how to cope with something of this size and magnitude. So the job presented a number of challenges just beyond size. First was obviously the arch top and getting that right. But secondly, these are double pane units, and so each one had to be ordered to exactly the same size, otherwise we'd have an impossible glazing problem, which meant we had to build this window to very tight tolerances. There's about a 1/16 of an inch gap all the way around on this glass, so there was no room for error. The second aspect of this is that it was built as a lattice, so this is a continuous piece, and this is a continuous piece with a closed halving joint here. And all of these joints were done on the CNC. Well, believe it or not, this was a service entrance with a metal roll-up door. And you'll notice that this is Federal period with 4 lights, but it balances the building with the windows above, which are 6 light, but it keeps the pane the proportion of the panes in the same aspect. Otherwise, this is a classic restoration window. Could have been built in the 1800s, and normal glazing, thin, narrow mountain bars at 5/8. And the only modern thing is a film on this for impact resistance. So you could hit this with a hammer and it will shatter but not penetrate. This is a commercial building that is historically accurate in terms of its structure, and particularly the back structure. And it's going to be a restaurant, and the upper story windows and the building in the back are built to traditional standards, similar to the building across the street. And this is very much our bread and butter, the sort of things that we do regularly.
Well, my job really is to buy the supplies, organize the wood, make sure that we have everything we need for a job. So when we start a job, I will sort of run through a list of what wood we need. I go down to the lumberyard, which is about a mile away, and I go and get my wood, and if it's not too much, we bring it back. If it's a big load, they'll deliver to us. And then I break down the wood cuts for Hastings, so that he doesn't have to think about how he gets the best out of the wood. I've already done that for him. And so we try and maximize the wood usage, and we don't have a lot of waste because of that. So I do a lot of the sanding. I do a lot of helping work. I don't do a lot of the physical work, although I will help him with the plane.
But often you're on the outfeed side of things, which is really helpful.
So it's I don't tend to get my fingers very near a blade, except for the chop saw. But I do all the paint, I do all the dye, all the stain work. I do that.
Our philosophy has really been to keep the business small but of high quality, and to build enduring relationships with customers so that we get repeat business. It doesn't always work exactly that way, but that's the design. And what we're trying to do is be relentlessly efficient, so we don't worry so much about machine utilization as we worry about our available time utilization. And to hire employees on an inefficient process is the functional equivalent of ripping up dollar bills in the parking lot. So anytime we can make the process more efficient with a piece of equipment, it makes sense to buy the equipment. It has residual value, whereas wages have no residual value. They walk out with a six-pack at night. Here's an early model Laguna that in CNC years is an oldie, but they're really solidly built compared to many other machines on the market at this price point. The chassis here is huge and bomb-proof. We added the grid table so that we can put a grid and pod system for solid wood machining, but similarly we can just take those off and put a spoil board down and do traditional nested machining. One of the things I like about this is it has an extremely long Z-axis, so we can do a lot of really useful machining in the Z-axis because of this additional height. And when we got into the business, we decided that we didn't want to have a wood shop without a CNC capability. And so this was the first machine that we bought rather than brought with us. And we had some early problems with a PC-based control system, and this was upgraded to the B&R dedicated control system. And this thing is pretty bomb-proof. You turn it on, it does what it needs to do, and you turn it off. And we couldn't be happier with it. All things being equal, we would have loved a tool changer, but in the scheme of things, the grid table is more useful to us, gives us more functionality than a tool changer. So that was the kind of economic trade-off that we had to make. So in fact, the reason I leave this little piece, this is the bottom of the material, is so I can run a test just to make sure that I'm fully centered. And typically, first time, it's not usually 100% right. We could just shift this a 1/16th to the right, and it would do better. And I can either redo that in a number of ways. I'd probably just use the offset in Aspire. We spent some time in the sanctuary at Dolphin Way, and this was the joint that all of those windows, it's called a closed halving joint, and it confers great strength on this, and is a lattice approach. And to do this required 3 separate machining operations on the CNC, so which in turn required extremely accurate placement of the material. And so we elected to go with the grid table, and this sits on top of the Laguna table that came here, this black phenolic table, and we flattened it with a spoil ball cutter, put this aluminum grid table, which is made, a number of people make them, but this one was Northeastern Manufacturing. And then they make pods, vacuum pods, they'll make custom pods. These are called vice pods. They can hold the work, as you can see, very solidly. But for the church windows, we had these custom vacuum pods actually made, and so that we could put a fence in the middle and one piece like that and one piece like that. And so we could do 2 pieces of work at the same time. Obviously pods would be lined up, and then the vacuum is directed through this gasket. And it's an extremely accurate hold down method. And if you were to do a close-up on this joint, you can see how tightly this fits after 3 separate machining operations. In fact, in high humidity, it's harder to get this together because the wood swells a bit. When we were first looking for a CNC, I was looking in the second-hand market, and Router Bob said to me, and I remember these words exactly, he said, well, if you buy a second-hand machine, who looks after you? And I said, well, that's a very good point. And I decided to go with Laguna because I wanted to feel that there was someone there who would support us. And I know enough about computers to know that they can go wrong in ways that are unrepeatable and anomalous. And so you need someone you can talk to. And that proved to be the case, whether it was Jose, Sean, or Router Bob. They were really very helpful. And so when the problems were sort of getting frustrated, when I got really sort of frustrated, Laguna came and changed out this control system to the B&R, and that's proven to be, in fact, any error that we've had in that has been an operator error rather than a machine problem.
Well, I hope you've enjoyed the video and seen some of the work that we do here at Oakley Custom Woodwork.
It's been a great pleasure to show you not only some of our work actually out in the field and see some of our customers, but also to see the shop where all the work happens.
One cup of tea, ready to go.